right, hello. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Tabitha Gussler. I am a realtor and a team leader at Keller Williams Excel Realty, and I wanted to share some math with you. So stick with me. I'm going to be making some assumptions. I'm going to be sharing some details with you, and it's going to be a lot of math. I've never been an official school teacher, but I hear they like to use whiteboards, so that's how I'm going to show you these numbers, because I feel like real examples are the best way to demonstrate what's going on in our market today. In case you haven't heard, everyone's heard, people are paying more than houses are worth to purchase a home in Central Ohio right now. And it's not just affecting our market here. We're hearing about this across the country, things like appraisal gaps. And I'm hearing language and people saying things like, oh, I can't imagine paying more than something is worth, or there's no way that's a good investment. And I want to challenge that language and challenge that rhetoric a little bit. But rather than just saying, hey, this is what you have to do, I want to show you how the math actually can work in your favor. I would argue that not only is it a good time to sell your home, but because of all of the financial components that have to do with home purchase, it's still a good time to buy a house, whether it feels like it in the moment or not. So let's talk some numbers. All right. So let's say you are in the market today for a home whose actual value, whether that's through comparative market analysis or through the actual appraisal that's done by a professional. Let's say the agreed upon value of that house is $400,000. Okay. Here's what we're seeing in Columbus area, in Delaware County, and in areas all across the country. You cannot buy a $400,000 house for $400,000. So I did some research for a client recently, and we found out that homes in their area had sold on average for 7% over, so 107% of their actual value or their asking price. So I figured, you know what, let's go worst case scenario. Let's say that if you wanted to buy this $400,000 house today, you are actually going to have to enter into a contract price of $450,000. Right, or approximately 11 and some change % over the true value. So what we're talking about right now is called gap appraisal or appraisal gap, whichever, depending on who you're talking to. So what that means is that you need to bring not only your down payment, but an extra $50,000 to this transaction, right? And you know it's not worth that and you're going to pay it anyway. And you agree to it and everybody's happy, right? So let's run those numbers out and see what that looks like. And we're going to assume that you don't have $450,000 cash. You have to get a loan. You were excited because you thought you were going to have 20% down, but now that you have to pay that gap, now your loan amount is going to technically have 10% down, but it's going to be 10% of the value, because that's how mortgage lenders and more importantly, the underwriters and people who set rates say that it has to work. So that means in this case, you are going to bring $90,000 cash, and your loan amount is going to be based on 10% of 400, which is 360,000. Okay. Here's where the math starts to work in our favor, and here's where we get some good news. Today, even with 90% loan to value, you can secure an interest rate in the neighborhood of 3%, right? So historically low, it's essentially the bank equivalent of zero, and you are going to have a monthly mortgage payment. And if we're talking about payment, and you guys know what mortgage means, that's called P&I, principal and interest. So this is not going to include your taxes and insurance, but we want to keep it streamlined here. And your principal and interest payment on this is going to be $1,518 a month, right? So that's your today scenario. You have 90% cash out of pocket that you needed to bring to the transaction, and your monthly payment is $1,518 a month, right? So let's look at the other side of the board here, and let's say, you know what, I know that's what I have to do. I really like the house. There's just something in me that says I can't pay way more than something's worth. Where'd that $50,000 go? I'm not just going to give that to the seller, and I'm going to wait, all right? So let's say in this scenario, you are going to wait and you're going to look again and you're going to find a beautiful home in 2 years. And 2 years from now, this exact same home is still the home of your dreams, and this house is for sale. Here's what we're gonna see. Annual appreciation in the last few years, especially in the areas that we specialize in at Keller Williams Excel Realty, annual appreciation has been anywhere from 5% to, in some areas, it's as much as 12% year over year, right? I like to be conservative. So in our scenario, we're gonna say that this home appreciated 6% each year for the next 2 years, right? Here's what the industry analysts say. We cannot continue with home values appreciating at 8 to 12% per year. However, we still believe that we are not in a bubble, right? We are not in speculative selling. What we're seeing is an offset of supply and demand. As supply and demand begin to rebalance, homes will appreciate, but just at a lower rate. So we're gonna be conservative, we're gonna call it 6% appreciation per year. What we're gonna find is that over these next 2 years, this home whose true appraised value today is worth $400,000. Now that home, oh, you know what, I'm seeing that you can't see my green very well, hold on. That home in 2 years is gonna have a value of, guess what? $450,000. I pick round numbers because they're easy to work with, right? And let's say now 2 years from now, we don't have a huge offset of supply and demand. We don't have 15 buyers for every seller. So you don't have to pay a ton, quote, extra for the house. And so your contract price this time can be $450,000. Congratulations, right? You did not have to overpay for the house. You didn't have to do the gap appraisal anymore. There was only 2 offers and yours won, right? And because you didn't buy the house today, you saved up, and you were smarter than me, and you saved up your whole $90,000. So you are going to go ahead and do a down payment of $90,000, and your loan will be $360,000, right? Are we tracking? Here's what's going to happen though. Banks can only charge interest rates at an approximate equivalent of 0 for just so long. Most analysts have told us that over time, in order to offset hyperinflation and the potential for hyperinflation, that the Fed's going to have to increase rates. And we know that that's going to happen. So let's talk about that. Let's say 2 years from now, interest rates are still historically low. They're just not near bank 0. So let's say instead of 3%, and again, I'm conservative, let's say you still get a great mortgage, but it's 4%, right? Your principal and interest payment on that loan, on that same $360,000, is going to be now $1,719, right? Let's say we need to get a little bit more aggressive as a country with our financial policies, and instead of the interest rates for a 30-year loan being 4%, let's say that you actually have, again, still what banks would call historically low, but you have to get a 30-year fixed mortgage of 4.5%. Now your payment is $1,825 per month, right? Same house. By the way, I'm sure you lived somewhere for these 2 years, and depending on whether or not you are currently in a homeownership situation or you're renting, your rent may or may not be similar to this number through those 2 years anyway, right? What we're talking about here is securing a home now with a mortgage at $1,518 per month, or securing the exact same home for the same price with the same cash out, and your mortgage is here, okay? What we do is we looked at industry average, and on average, people live in a home for 7 years. So over the course of that 7 years, and we're gonna assume that 7 years applies whether you buy it today or you buy it 2 years from now, it works for you. It's the best home in the world for the next 7 years. The difference in pure interest that you've paid for the exact same mortgage for the same amount to buy the same house, the difference is somewhere between $16,000 and $25,000 over the course of that 7 years. And the reason it's a range is because, guys, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what interest rates are going to be. So if they're 4, it's in the 16 range. If they're 4.5, it's in the $25,000 range for interest that you pay just for the 7 years that you live in that house. Right? This phrase is a little scary and it's a little hard to come to terms with. But hopefully this math shows you why, for the right person in the right scenario, if you find the perfect home, and if you're fortunate enough to be in a case where you have the opportunity to pay a little bit more to get your family into the home that you want, why it may not be the worst financial decision that you ever made. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Realtors, if you want to share this with your clients and you come make an offer on one of my next listings, I'm good with that too. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.